Guns, guns, guns. That's what Destiny 2 needs right now. It's way more guns. Maybe. Maybe not. With the loss of the randomly rolled weapon reward from all activities, it's easy to tell what weapons are and aren't going to be worth your time. However, this results in a scenario where once you have a gun, you have it, and there is no more searching for that perfect roll. That means the grind for the perfect weapon roll doesn't exist, leaving a big hole that used to be a part of the Destiny 1 grind. I've said before that I don't think the random weapon roll grind is the ideal grind for the game, but to some people, the fact that it existed is a good thing. That's not to say that completely removing random rolls is a good or bad thing. It entirely depends on what kind of player you are. No random rolls removes a lot of the frustrations that come with trying to get a weapon, but also removes reasons as to why a lot of people played to begin with, the chase for the perfect roll. But lately I've seen suggestions that if this is the way Bungie wants to go with weapons, that Bungie needs to introduce hundreds of more guns into the game so that people can hunt for those hidden treasures, the proverbial diamond in the rough. I'm going to argue that I don't think adding hundreds of weapons would really do a whole lot for the game or the enjoyment of the average player or the player base as a whole on average. First, let's start with some sort of number. According to DestinyTracker.com's database, there are 34 primary, 53 energy, and 59 legendary weapons in Destiny, making for a total of 146 legendary weapons, not including exotics in this because it's pretty much a given that we always want more exotics all the time. And let's say that something like doubling the amount of guns is something within reason. We have 150 guns for the full launch of the game. It's a lot of guns. Let's say we want double the weapons. Let's say Iron Banner will add another 7 to 10 weapons. This video is being written before Iron Banner goes live. This includes raids, trials, everything. I went through every single weapon to devise some sort of a list of popular weapons or good weapons. I also asked a bunch of people in different Discord chats and streams to poll people on what they consider to be good or at the least popular legendary weapons. After gathering all of those results, out of the 146 weapons available, I made my own list of about 25 guns, with the majority of the responses from other chat rooms coming in with slightly fewer than that. Using Destiny Tracker's popular items list at the time, which was on a weekend, so trials, most of the guns in my list were on that list. That's about 17% of total guns being considered good or popular or top tier in some way. There's definitely a fraction more that you would consider to be in that also kind of good range, but maybe not the most popular. Faction rallies added 12 guns plus the winning faction, so 13 to the loot pool. Of the 13 added, I would say the number, Pleiades or Pleiades Corrector, and Dire Promise are considered worthy of use by the community at large, give or take 1 or 2 guns. That's 23% of the guns added, and considering the small pool, still within reason of our original 17% number. I'd say, based on all of that, on average, for every 10 guns that Bungie adds to the game, 2 of them are going to be considered good by the community at large, or rather, 2 will become popular enough to go widespread for any sort of a given time frame. So people claim that Bungie needs to add hundreds more weapons to the game to make things more interesting. For the purposes of this video, we'll say that they need to double the amount of guns. My question is, if the majority of weapons added to the game are just going to be dismantled almost immediately, with only a few making the community-driven cut, would that really impact your gameplay in a significant way? There are only so many archetypes of weapons to begin with, so not only would Bungie need to add a ton of guns, they would need to increase the power of those guns in such a way that you would want to use them over what we have now. Otherwise, they're just not going to be used. This is called power creep, and generally speaking, power creep isn't very good. This also has nothing to do, in my opinion, with hardcore versus casual players either. I think this affects everyone in a pretty equal way. The hardcore players would figure out what the best stuff is pretty quickly, that info would trickle down to the mainstream, and we're sort of right back where we started, except now there's maybe another 20 guns that are as good as the guns that we already have, maybe with slightly different perks. Not only that, but that's another 150 guns that Bungie needs to manually make up, model, name, and add flavor text to. They are never going to add 150 guns to the game in one burst, except on major releases. It is unreasonable to expect Bungie to do that, especially when they can be using that time on future guns, exotics, or just content in general. Not that everyone works on the same thing all at once, but you know what I mean. We've seen how many that they're going to add in a new event, and it's not even close to 150. I get that part of the hunt for weapons is finding those hidden gems, those weapons that end up being really good that nobody expected. That is fun, and adding more guns to the loot table would increase those odds. But with no random rolls, perhaps we'll never know if guns are capable of being top tier because they're locked with a perk that we don't consider good, or something along those lines. The main point of this video isn't arguing that random rolls should or should not come back, though. The main point is that I don't think adding what we would consider a reasonable amount of guns to the game by hand would do a whole lot. We can still ask that question though, and we will. Should random rolls return to the game? I think if you're someone who is a very avid player, the answer is probably going to be yes. You have the time, you have the commitment to play a lot, and you want your loot to be exciting. You don't just want to get something first try and be done, although that is very much a possibility if you get really lucky with a random roll. If you're not a super active player, maybe you're playing a couple hours a week, your answer might end up being no. You maybe don't want to have to spend hours upon hours of grinding the Crucible to get a good, better Devils to drop. You just want to get it and enjoy it. These are not mutually exclusive though. I'm sure there are avid players who like static rolls and non-avid players who don't like static rolls. Having random rolls simulates the addition of hundreds or even thousands of more guns into the game. Bungie isn't going to manually make thousands of weapons, and this isn't an RPG. Is reforging the answer? The ability to change your perks on your gun by paying a currency? Maybe. But I feel like we might end up with the same problem of feeling like we have static rolls because there is always going to be a best setup on a gun. Most players are naturally going to divert to that specific roll, and it'll just be a matter of spending a bunch of money to get it instead of just getting it right away. I've also seen the suggestion of mods having a bigger influence on weapons, with mods being attachments allowing people to swap parts around, something along those lines. It definitely is an interesting idea. It might fall in line a bit with the whole reforging concept, but something like that is not a system that is going to be revised or remade in a very short amount of time. That would be a much longer term goal, not something that'll happen pretty quickly. The random weapon roll issue is definitely not the easiest problem to solve, but doubling or even tripling the amount of guns, in my opinion, isn't going to do as much as people might think it will. If you enjoyed this video, a positive rating would be very appreciated. Thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you next time.